This is Volume.
Oh, the yellow M&M looks like he's trying to go on his tippy toes, isn't he? With this picture. No, it's called a pose, actually. What's going on down here? Why are you doing that? Oh, it's called a pose. Give me a break.
It's a video game. If you're like me, you like your games to have a bit of sauce, and Volume has sauce. Volume is like that one time my brother shaved his head and dunked it in a bucket of tomato ketchup. It's dripping in the stuff. Volume technically counts as a parkour game, but it's not your regular everyday style of parkour game. For one, it's nothing like Mirror's Edge. But seriously, Volume is much less like a purpose-built parkour game and feels way more reminiscent of something like CS Surf. It's basically just an FPS controller in a parkour setting. This works really well for the game though, and gives it a certain feel that other parkour games don't quite capture. If you know Ball, you may be thinking, this game looks mighty familiar. Well, take a look at this simple diagram and you'll see exactly why. That's right. Leonard Lemaitre, I believe that's how you say his name, apologies if not, who made such classics as Babdi and Straftat, also worked on Volume. Which leads me into the first thing I want to properly go into, and that's the game's visual appeal. Some would call it brutalist. Those people would be right, that's exactly what it is, but I want to dissect it further as the intelligent, amazing, and beautiful person that I am. And to do so, we're going to need to play the game. Now I already did that part off camera, so let me give you all of the story that the game ever outright gives to you, and that's on the Steam page. In the derelict capital of Afro-Eurasia, ruled by an all-controlling ministry, Robert embarks on a bureaucratic quest to restore his family's revoked ration tickets. This is basically all the story tells you about the main character, their motivations, and where you are. There are some NPCs in the game who drip feed you little pieces of info here and there, but overall it's not much, and it's more for world-building's sake than any overall narrative being told. This works for Volume, as it's the type of game that you pass through incredibly quickly and replay a bunch of times in order to try and go even quicker. The run that got me 17th in the world that you saw at the start of this video took me many retries on that specific level alone, and had the game been repeating the same dialogue or making me pause for cutscenes, it would have gotten annoying. Does Volume live up to its themes though? Does the art of the game give you that feeling of a brutalist regime? The answer is complicated, but overall I would say that it does. The few NPCs that do show up that don't work for the government tend to be in real dire situations, and the architecture itself is hostile enough that it made me feel sort of out of place, or I guess just unwelcome in the game space. That said, there are a few levels that don't feel this way, and some levels that just stick out entirely. The first few stages all smoothly flow into one another. You can believe that the door or pipe that you went through leads into the next stage, but at a certain point this collapses and you end up in God knows where. A lot of these stages specifically feel weird. They aren't quite brutalist anymore, and some of them even have plant life, which majorly juxtaposes the levels prior. I don't think this is a bad thing. It's beautiful and it makes this already weird and abstract game feel even more dreamlike, but it's definitely worth mentioning when it comes to the overall tone of the game. That's not even to mention what the NPCs look like. They all look incredibly strange. This isn't new if you played prior titles from Lemaitre, but even then, the NPCs in this game have very little cohesion amongst themselves, all looking odd in their own way. This also works for the game though, and it helps to make you feel a little more out of place. Speaking of the levels, I want to talk about level design because it's the one place in which this game feels like it's kind of lacking. The levels are a real mixed bag when it comes to design. Some of them are great. In fact, most of them are, but every now and again you run into a stage that just doesn't make any sense. Difficult to navigate, labyrinthine, purposefully confusing, this happens multiple times throughout the game. Ultimately it's fine, as this isn't the type of game you play once and are done with, as already mentioned. You're probably going to be replaying it a bunch trying to beat your time, and generally once you've done one run, you do know where to go. But it still feels odd that some levels just leave you in a very confused state with maze-like layouts, including wrong turns and the like, considering how quickly you're supposed to beat the game. In my first playthrough, I beat the whole game in little over an hour. That's not to say that's how long the game is, as that doesn't include getting gold in every level, grabbing all the secrets, talking to all the characters, or doing any of the B-sides. But considering how short that first playthrough of the game is, those slightly confusing levels feel even more out of place when they do show up, which leads to the level design feeling like a major mixed bag. I could call it incongruous design, and then you could proceed to beat me to death with a stick for even daring to open my pompous mouth. The last thing I want to mention before you go buy and play this game for yourself is the music. The music is outstanding. This isn't particularly shocking considering who's behind it. If you're gay, you might have played a little game called Signalis, and if you're even gayer than that, you might know that the artist behind the soundtrack of that game goes by 1000 Eyes. This is the artist who made the music for Vholume. You may think that atmospheric synth-based survival horror music might not be a great fit for Vholume as a high-octane movement game. You may be saying, what about my breakcore? I love breakcore! To which I would remind you that as much as it sounds like a good fit for the gameplay, when it comes to matching the art direction to the soundtrack, this game has done an impeccable job. This style of music fits incredibly well in a game with environments such as this, and I think honestly it's a shock how well it all goes together. It also helps to be listening to some nice, almost sort of calming music while playing this game, as you might get a little upset while going for those top spots. Now, I did say the music was the last thing I would mention, but this game has more to it than just the game. Of course, I've already mentioned the secrets and leaderboards, but this game has two other features built in at launch that make it honestly a steal for the price, and those are multiplayer and community levels. The game has launched with support for Steam Workshop levels, which means once you've gotten a time you're happy with on every base level, there's still more stuff to do. Not only can you race your friends around the stages, but you can also find new ones on the Steam Workshop to test out and run yourself. You could also try your own hand at developing a level and see how that goes. I personally would highly recommend this game if you like movement games. Honestly, even if you just like the atmosphere presented, I think the game is still worth it. So go buy it, play it, and let me know what you think in the comments below. Hopefully, I see you guys in the next video. Ciao.